I collapsed on stage in front of 300 people at my college graduation, but the real blow came when I woke up in the hospital. My parents weren't there. They were across town at a birthday party for the son of my father's mistress, a secret second family my mother had helped him hide for 5 years. That was the day I realized that if I wanted a life worth living, I was going to have to build it without them. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a part. And let me know in the comments below. Have you ever stayed in a relationship hoping the other person would change? Let's get started. The auditorium was a suffocating vortex of June heat and anticipation. I stood in a sea of black synthetic gowns, wedged between 300 other graduates, trying to keep the world from tilting on its axis. Sweat that had nothing to do with the temperature trickled down my spine, cold and clammy. My vision was beginning to fracture at the edges, turning the proud smiles of parents in the bleachers into indistinct smudges of color. I blinked rapidly, attempting to anchor my focus on the dean, whose voice droned on like a distant radio station, reading names from an endless scroll. Brianna Michelle Foster. The sound of my own name was the catalyst. I took a step forward, intending to walk across the stage and claim the diploma I had spent 4 agonizing years earning. Instead, my legs dissolved. They felt less like bone and muscle and more like water. The world didn't just spin, it capsized. I heard a collective gasp ripple through the crowd, a distant, underwater sound. The last sensory detail I registered was the coarse texture of the industrial carpet rushing up to meet my cheek. Then the lights went out. Consciousness returned in fragments. First came the smell, sharp, sterile antiseptic, followed by the rhythmic, persistent beeping of a monitor. I tried to sit up, panic flaring in my chest, but a firm, gentle hand pressed me back against the pillows. "Easy, sweetheart. You're in the hospital," a voice soothed. It belonged to a nurse with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. "You collapsed at your ceremony. You've been out for about 20 minutes. My throat felt like I had swallowed a handful of sand. "My parents," I croaked, looking around the sterile white room. "Did someone call them?" The nurse's expression shifted, a subtle flicker of discomfort passing over her features. She checked my 4-drip, avoiding direct eye contact. "The school contacted your emergency contacts. Someone should be here soon." But soon stretched into an hour, then 2. I lay hooked up to an 4-bag, answering a doctor's rote questions about my history. Had I eaten? Yes. Was I on medication? No. History of fainting? Never. The entire time, my eyes were glued to the door. I constructed scenarios in my head to explain their absence. My father would burst in, blaming the notorious city traffic, his face flushed with worry. My mother would be right behind him, fussing over the hospital gown, demanding to see the chief of medicine. They never came. At the 3-hour mark, the silence of the room was broken not by my parents, but by the purposeful click of sensible heels on linoleum. The door swung open to reveal my grandmother, Ruth Foster. At 5'2", she was a force of nature, dressed in a blue pantsuit and clutching her oversized purse like a shield. "Brianna," she breathed, rushing to the bedside. Her weathered, warm hands cupped my face instantly. "Grandma Ruth." My voice cracked, the tears finally spilling over. "Where are they? Where are Mom and Dad?" I saw it then, the flicker in her dark eyes. It was a cocktail of anger, sorrow, and a deep, weary knowledge that made my stomach drop faster than it had on the stage. She smoothed the hair back from my damp forehead. "Let's make sure you're okay first. Then we'll talk about your parents." A doctor entered, explaining that I was suffering from severe dehydration and exhaustion. My body had simply capitulated to the stress of finals, work, and neglecting my own basic needs. I was to be kept overnight for observation. When the doctor left, the room felt smaller, the silence heavier. Grandma Ruth pulled a chair close, the legs scraping against the floor. She sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world, and pulled out her phone. Your mother sent me this 4 hours ago, she said, her voice quiet but steady. She turned the screen toward me. The text was brief, brutal in its banality. Can't make it to graduation. Something came up. Tell Brianna we're sorry. I stared at the pixels until they blurred. Something came up? What could be more important than my college graduation? Grandma Ruth's jaw tightened. You want the truth, baby? The real truth. I nodded, though a part of me wanted to squeeze my eyes shut and pretend this wasn't happening. Your father is at a birthday party, she said, plainly and without sugarcoating. For the son of the woman he's been seeing for the past 5 years. And your mother went with him because she has been pretending everything is fine for so long she doesn't know how to stop. The heart monitor's beeping seemed to accelerate, echoing the thudding in my ears. What? His name is Greg Foster, but he's been living like Greg Anderson half the time. The woman's name is Candace. She has a 15-year-old son, Tyler. Your father pays for his private school. He takes them on vacations. He missed your high school graduation dinner because he was at Tyler's baseball game. I felt numbness spread through my limbs, cold and absolute. 5 years. Suddenly, the memories clicked into a horrifying mosaic. The late nights at the office. The missed family dinners. The way my mother's smile had become a brittle mask years ago. And Mom just lets him? I whispered. Your mother loves the idea of a perfect marriage more than she loves herself, Grandma Ruth said sadly. And today they chose that lie over you. The revelation hung in the hospital air, toxic and heavy. My father had a second family. My mother was an accomplice to her own humiliation. And I was the collateral damage, abandoned on a hospital bed on the day I graduated summa cum laude. I graduated top of my class, Grandma, I whispered, the words tasting like ash. I had a speech prepared. I bought a dress to wear under this gown. I wanted them to be proud. Oh, baby. She stood and wrapped her arms around me, and I finally shattered. I sobbed into her shoulder, mourning not just their absence today, but the death of the image I held of them. I am proud. I have always been proud. You are brilliant and strong and so much better than they deserve. The next morning, the sun streamed through the window, offensively bright. I had made a decision in the dark hours of the night. I was done waiting to be chosen. Grandma Ruth was taking me home, not to my parents' house but to hers. However, we had to stop at my childhood home first to retrieve my belongings. Driving up to the house felt like approaching a movie set. The lawn was manicured to perfection, the hanging plants were vibrant, and the two-car garage stood closed and silent. It was a facade. A beautiful shell hiding a rotting interior. My hand shook as I unlocked the front door. Mom? Dad? Silence. We walked past the gallery wall of family photos, lies framed in glass. There was no photo from yesterday. In the kitchen, I found my mother sitting at the island, nursing a coffee. When she saw us, her face cycled through surprise, guilt, and finally, a terrifying, forced brightness. Brianna, you're home. How was graduation? I'm so sorry we missed it. Your father had a work crisis and... Stop, I said, my voice harder than I thought possible. Just stop lying, Mom. She blinked, freezing. Excuse me. I know where you were. I know about Candace. I know about Tyler. I know Dad has been living a double life for 5 years and you've been helping him cover it up. The color drained from her face. She looked at Grandma Ruth with betrayal. You told her? Someone had to, Ruth snapped. Since you weren't going to. Do you even know where your daughter was last night? She was in the hospital. She collapsed. My mother stood up, hands fluttering uselessly. Oh my God, Brianna. My phone was in my purse. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected her. Because if you answered, you'd have to leave the party. You'd have to choose between me and the show you put on for Dad's mistress. It's an arrangement, she pleaded, her voice rising. It's complicated. It's simple, Mom. You chose a birthday party for a stranger's kid over my graduation. I turned to the stairs. I'm packing. I'm moving in with Grandma. I went to my room, which looked like a time capsule of my high school self. I packed methodically. Clothes, books, my laptop, the quilt Grandma Ruth made me. My mother hovered in the doorway, trying to explain, trying to justify the unjustifiable. She looked tired, her roots showing, her face lined with the stress of maintaining a 5-year lie. Love is supposed to show up, I told her, zipping my suitcase. You taught me that actions speak louder than words. Your actions yesterday screamed that I don't matter as much as keeping Dad happy. That's not true, she whispered. Then leave him. Choose me. She looked away. I can't. It's not that simple. Then I'm going. On my final trip downstairs, I stopped by my father's study. His wall of awards mocked me. There were no photos of me in there. But on the credenza behind his desk, I found it, a framed photo of a teenage boy in a baseball uniform. Tyler. Right there in the heart of my father's private sanctuary. I picked up the frame and marched downstairs. My mother was waiting by the kitchen. Brianna, what are you doing? I held up the photo. This was in Dad's study. Tyler. Not me. She looked ashamed, shrinking into herself. I set the frame face up on the kitchen counter, where my father couldn't miss it. Tell him I saw this, I said, my voice cold. Tell him I know exactly where I rank. And tell him I'm done competing for his attention with people who aren't even his family. I walked out the door, past the perfect lawn and the perfect lies, and got into Grandma Ruth's sensible sedan. I saw the curtain move in the living room window. My mother was watching me leave, but she wasn't coming after me. As we drove away, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. I was homeless in a way, but I was also free. Grandma Ruth's house was the antithesis of my parents' pristine, sterile showpiece. It was smaller, cluttered with sentimental knickknacks, and smelled permanently of lavender and old paper. But as we walked through the door, it felt like oxygen. The guest room is yours for as long as you need it, she said, ushering me inside. I cleared the closet. Fresh sheets are on the bed. I collapsed onto the quilt-covered mattress and slept for 3 hours. When I woke up, the air smelled of fried chicken and cornbread. We ate at her small kitchen table, the same one where I'd done homework as a child. It was the first real meal I'd had in days. We need to talk about what happens next, Ruth said, setting down her fork. Not just practically, but emotionally. They are going to keep pushing. Your mother especially. There is no normal anymore, I said bitterly. It was all fake. Ruth sighed, confirming the timeline. She had caught my father with the other family at a mall 3 years ago. She had given him an ultimatum. He had confessed to my mother, who chose to believe his lie that it was over, just to keep her security. I should have told you, Ruth admitted, reaching for my hand. I thought I was protecting you while you finished school. I see now that was a mistake. It wouldn't have hurt less, I said. But I wouldn't have felt so stupid. That night, I finally turned my phone back on. It vibrated violently with notifications. 17 missed calls from my mother. Dozens of texts. I'm sorry. Dad had a work emergency. We'll take you to dinner. Then, later messages from my father. Your mother says you moved out. This is childish. Come home. Childish. He missed my graduation for his mistress's son's birthday, and I was the childish one. I blocked them both. Amidst the barrage of gaslighting, there was one message from an unknown number. Hi Brianna. This is Jennifer Cole from Preston Marketing Group. We received your application. Would you be available for a phone interview? I stared at the screen. Preston Marketing was a top-tier firm. I had applied on a whim, never expecting a response. In the wreckage of my personal life, A professional lifeline had appeared. I replied immediately, setting up a call for Tuesday. Later, I knocked on Grandma Ruth's door. She was reading a mystery novel in bed. "They want to interview me," I said, my voice trembling. "What if I mess it up? What if I'm not ready?" Ruth took off her glasses. "Sweetheart, look at what you've survived. You put yourself through school. You graduated with honors while your parents were living a lie. You are stronger than you think. You're not living for them anymore. You're living for yourself." "I'm scared of failing," I admitted. "Good. That means you care. Go get some sleep. You have a career to start." I went back to my room, the darkness feeling less oppressive. I realized I had been measuring my worth by my parents' approval for my entire life. But the world hadn't ended when they failed to show up. I was still here. I had a grandmother who loved me. I had a job interview. I spent the next 2 days preparing with obsessive focus. I researched the company until I could recite their client list backward. I practiced answers in the bathroom mirror. I channeled every ounce of my frustration and pain into determination. My parents had treated me like an option. I was going to make sure the world treated me like a priority. Tuesday morning came. I dressed in a blazer and heels, pacing the living room rug until Grandma Ruth forced a mug of tea into my hands. "Stop second-guessing yourself," she commanded. "Show them who you are." At 9:55 a.m., the phone rang. I took a deep breath, pushed the image of my father's study out of my mind, and answered. "Hello, this is Brianna Foster." The phone interview with Jennifer Cole lasted 45 minutes. What started as a nervous exchange quickly evolved into a stimulating conversation about digital marketing trends and brand authenticity. Jennifer was sharp, asking pointed questions about my portfolio, specifically a campaign I had designed for a local nonprofit with a $0 budget. "Your engagement metrics were remarkable," Jennifer noted. "How did you manage that without ad spend?" "I focused on community storytelling," I explained, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "People don't connect with logos. They connect with other people. We used user-generated content to build trust." "That's exactly the philosophy we value here," Jennifer said. "We'd like to bring you in for an in-person interview this Friday. 2 o'clock. I hung up and practically sprinted to the kitchen. Grandma Ruth was pretending to read the newspaper but was visibly eavesdropping. When I told her the news, she pulled me into a hug that smelled of peppermint and pride. "I knew it," she beamed. "Now we celebrate with ice cream before lunch." But the celebration was dampened by news Ruth shared over our bowls of vanilla bean. "Your mother came by yesterday while you were at the print shop." My spoon froze. "What did she want?" "To see you. To talk. She cried on my porch for 20 minutes, saying she was losing her daughter." Ruth paused, her face hardening. "I told her she could start fixing things by leaving your father. She said it was complicated. She left this for you." Ruth slid a cream-colored envelope across the table. My mother's handwriting. I tucked it into my pocket, refusing to let it ruin my momentum. "I'll read it later. Right now, I need to focus on getting this job." Friday arrived. I walked into the sleek glass-walled offices of Preston Marketing Group feeling like an imposter, but dressed like a professional. The interview was grueling. A 2-hour session with Jennifer, the creative director, and 2 account managers. They grilled me on strategy, crisis management, and design. Toward the end, Jennifer asked, "This job is high pressure. Deadlines don't move. How do you handle it when things go wrong?" I thought of the graduation, the hospital, the empty house. "I've learned recently that pressure reveals what really matters," I said truthfully. "I handle it by focusing on what I can control and letting go of what I can't. Challenges are temporary. Growth is permanent." I got the job offer the following Tuesday. Entry-level social media strategist. It was a start. It was my start. That evening, bolstered by my victory, I finally opened my mother's letter. It was 3 pages of beautiful script on expensive stationery. Dearest Brianna, I failed you. There is no excuse. I should have left him years ago. But I was scared. I don't know who I am without being Mrs. Gregory Foster. I don't know how to be alone. I hope you build an amazing life, and maybe someday you'll let me be a small part of it. I read it twice. It was brutally honest. She admitted her weakness. She admitted she was choosing fear over her daughter. It was an apology, yes, but it was a confession of paralysis. She saw the problem, but she wasn't willing to fix it. Honesty without change is just a confession, I murmured to the empty room. I folded the letter and put it away. It didn't make me angry anymore. It just made me resolved. I wasn't going to be like her. I wasn't going to let fear dictate my life. I had a job. I had a home with Grandma Ruth. And for the first time, I felt the stirrings of a future that belonged entirely to me. 6 months flew by in a blur of caffeine, spreadsheets, and strategy meetings. I threw myself into my role at Preston Marketing Group with the ferocity of someone who had nothing else to lose. I was the first to arrive and the last to leave. My campaigns for mid-sized clients were hitting record numbers. I was tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that comes from building something real. One afternoon, Jennifer called me into her office and asked me to close the door. My stomach flipped, but her expression was excited, not ominous. The CEO, Robert Chin, is launching a new initiative for startup brand development, she said. He needs someone to lead the research phase. I recommended you. Me. I blinked. I've only been here 6 months. And in those 6 months, you've shown more initiative than people who have been here for 5 years. Robert wants to meet you at 4. The meeting was a whirlwind. Robert was direct and intimidating, but he listened. I pitched my vision for the program, drawing on my understanding of digital native brands. By the end of the hour, I was walking out with a promotion to the executive track, a raise, and a project that could define my career. I was floating on air, until I got back to my desk and saw the text message. It was from a number I had blocked, but somehow, it had gotten through. Brianna, this is your mother. Your father is getting remarried next month to Candace. We are sending you an invitation. We hope you will come and support the family. I stared at the screen, waiting for the pain. Instead, I felt a cold, distant pity. Support the family? The family that didn't exist? They wanted me to attend a wedding celebrating the very affair that had destroyed us. The physical invitation arrived a few days later, forwarded to my work address. Heavy cardstock. Gold embossing. Gregory Foster and Candace Anderson request the honor of your presence. Tyler was listed as the best man. My mother wasn't named, but the text implied she was orchestrating the attendance. Are they serious? My colleague Nathan asked when I showed him the invite over lunch. Nathan had become my office anchor. Kind, funny, and beautifully normal. Dead serious, I said. My mother thinks if we all show up and smile, it validates the mess. It makes it civilized. My phone rang. It was my mother, calling from yet another new number. I went to the lobby to take it. Did you get the invitation? She asked, breathless. I did. And I'm not coming. Brianna, please. Your father and I have worked things out. The divorce was amicable. Candace is actually quite nice. It would mean a lot to your father. Mom, listen to yourself. 6 months ago this woman was destroying your marriage. Now I'm supposed to eat cake and celebrate her marrying Dad. You're being selfish, she snapped, her voice turning sharp. Family shows up for each other. That broke me. I laughed, a harsh sound in the quiet lobby. Family shows up? Where were you at my graduation? Where were you when I was in the hospital? You don't get to play that card. I have apologized. You can't hold on to anger forever. I'm not holding on to anger, I said calmly. I'm letting go of you. I'm done with the lies and the performance. I'm not coming. I hung up and blocked the number. When I got home, I showed the invitation to Grandma Ruth. She looked at it with disdain. "What do you want to do with it?" she asked. I walked to the recycling bin and dropped it in. "Trash." "Amen," Ruth said. "Now come help me with dinner. I'm making pot roast." The wedding came and went. I didn't go. Instead, I spent that Saturday working on my presentation for the startup program and hanging out with Grandma Ruth. I felt a phantom limb sensation, a dull ache where my family used to be, but the relief of not participating in the charade was overwhelming. At work, Jennifer noticed my stress. She pulled me aside and gave me the card of her therapist. "Family trauma is real work," she told me. "You don't have to white-knuckle it alone. And remember, family is what you make it." That sentiment was proven true when Nathan invited me to his family's Thanksgiving. "My mom cooks for an army," he said. "It's chaos, but it's fun. Grandma Ruth is going to Florida, right? I don't want you to be alone." I accepted, terrified and touched. Thanksgiving at the Williams household was a revelation. It was loud, messy, and genuinely warm. There were no forced smiles, no tension simmering under the surface. Nathan's mother hugged me like she'd known me for years. His grandmother interrogated me about my job with delightful nosiness. Sitting at their table passing the mashed potatoes, I realized that this was what I had been mourning. Not my parents specifically, but the safety of belonging. 3 months after the wedding I missed, Grandma Ruth came home from her book club with news. She had run into Aunt Patricia, my mother's sensible sister who had distanced herself years ago. "You're never going to believe this," Ruth said, setting down her purse. "Your father's marriage is already imploding." I froze. "What?" Patricia said Candace was only after his money. 3 months in, and she spent $50,000. She's pushing for a bigger house, expensive vacations. Your father is stressed, losing weight, and his performance at work is slipping. "And Mom?" Ruth sighed, her expression darkening. "Your mother is playing therapist. She's listening to him complain, giving him advice. Patricia says she's convinced that if she supports him through this, he'll realize what he lost and come back." "She's waiting for him," I whispered, horrified. "After everything." "She is. It's pathetic, Brianna. But Patricia asked about you. She wants to see you." I met Aunt Patricia for coffee that Sunday. She looked healthy and free. She had divorced her own cheating husband years ago and built a successful catering business. "I'm proud of you," Patricia told me, "for walking away. I tried to tell your mother for years that she was teaching you to accept less than you deserve. She wouldn't listen." "Is it true about Dad?" "Oh, it's worse. Candace has already seen a divorce lawyer. She's going to take him for everything. And your mother is standing by with a dustpan to sweep up the pieces, hoping he'll let her keep them." Patricia squeezed my hand. The best decision I ever made was leaving my ex. I felt like I could finally breathe. "Don't let anyone convince you to go back to holding your breath." I drove home feeling vindicated but deeply sad. My parents were trapped in a cycle of their own making. My father by his greed and selfishness, my mother by her fear and lack of self-worth. They were drowning, and for the first time, I accepted that I couldn't save them. I could only save myself. December arrived in the city with a vengeance, bringing with it a biting wind that rattled the glass panes of the high-rise office buildings and a gray, persistent sky that seemed to mirror the exhaustion bone deep in everyone's marrow. At Preston Marketing Group, however, the atmosphere was electric, bordering on frantic. We were weeks away from the January launch of the Startup Brand Development Program, the initiative I had pitched, designed, and was now preparing to lead. My world had narrowed down to a singular focus: the work. I spent my days in a blur of caffeine and strategy, reviewing competitor analysis, finalizing pitch decks, and managing my small but mighty team of 3. I was the first one to swipe my badge in the morning and the last to watch the city lights flicker on in the evening. In the safety of deadlines and deliverables, I found a control over my life that my personal history had never afforded me. I was Brianna Foster, the rising star, the capable strategist, the woman who didn't need anyone. But the past has a way of finding cracks in even the most fortified armor. It happened on a Tuesday, 3 days before the office closed for the holidays. The intercom at my desk buzzed, jarring me from a deep dive into SEO analytics. Brianna. The receptionist's voice was hesitant, pitched low. There's a woman here to see you. She says she's your mother. My stomach dropped, a physical sensation like missing a step on a staircase. For a moment, I considered telling the receptionist to send her away, to call security, to claim I was in a meeting. But the curiosity, and a strange morbid sense of duty, won out. I'll be right there, I said, my voice tighter than I intended. I walked to the reception area, my heels clicking a sharp rhythm on the polished floor. My mother was sitting in one of the sleek modern guest chairs, looking entirely out of place against the minimalist decor. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her winter coat seemed a size too big, hanging loosely off her shoulders, and her hair, usually coiffed to perfection, was pulled back in a simple, slightly messy ponytail. She wasn't the polished, perfect Mrs. Gregory Foster anymore. She looked like a woman who was tired. "Mom," I said, stopping a safe distance away. "What are you doing here?" She stood up quickly, clutching her purse with both hands. "Brianna, you look wonderful. So professional." Her eyes darted around the busy office, taking in the bustle of people who respected me, people who knew nothing of the family drama she represented. "Can we talk? Please. Just for a few minutes." I felt the eyes of the receptionist on us. "Not here," I said quietly. "Let's go downstairs." We went to the coffee shop on the ground floor. It was noisy, filled with the clatter of espresso machines and the hum of corporate chatter, which provided a necessary buffer. I didn't order anything. I stood with my arms crossed, creating a physical barrier between us, while she bought a tea with hands that shook noticeably. We found a small table in the corner. She took a sip of the tea, closing her eyes for a moment as if drawing strength from the heat. "Patricia told me where you worked," she admitted, answering the question I hadn't asked yet. "I know you're angry with her for that, but please don't be." I begged her. "I just needed to see you." "I'm not angry at Aunt Patricia," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "But you can't just show up at my job, Mom. This is my professional life." "I know. I'm sorry." She took a breath, her gaze dropping to the cardboard cup. "I'm sorry for everything, Brianna. For missing your graduation. For choosing your father over you. For being weak when I should have been your mother." I sighed, looking out the window at the pedestrians battling the wind. "I've heard this before. You apologize, you say you're stuck, nothing changes." "Things are different now," she said, her voice gaining a sudden surprising intensity. "Your father's divorce is final next week." I looked back at her. "I heard. Candace took him for everything," she continued, a bitter edge creeping into her voice. "The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. She had a ruthless lawyer. Your father. He has nothing left. He's living out of a suitcase." "I can't say I feel sorry for him," I said honestly. "Neither do I." She looked up, meeting my eyes. "He came to me last week. He asked to stay with me in my apartment until he got back on his feet. He cried. Brianna. He said he had nowhere else to go, that I was the only one who really knew him." I braced myself, waiting for the inevitable, waiting to hear that she had taken him back, that she was nursing his wounds, that the cycle had restarted. "And?" I asked. And I said no. Prompt 3. The Evidence, Part 8. Close-up shot of a digital tablet screen held by a black hand. Joseph is holding a tablet up to the camera lens. On the tablet screen, a split-screen comparison. Left side, a lonely image of a small black girl, Cindy, standing completely alone on an empty sidewalk. Right side, a chaotic image of a white girl, Leona, surrounded by a large crowd of people helping her. Focus. The sharp focus is on the tablet screen, with Joseph's face slightly out of focus in the background, emphasizing the undeniable visual proof of the bias. 2 years had passed since the winter of my discontent, and the view from my life had changed entirely, both metaphorically and literally. I stood in my new office, running my fingers over the brushed steel placard on the door. Brianna Foster, Director of Brand Development. It wasn't just a title. It was a testament. The startup brand development program I had sketched out on a legal pad in Grandma Ruth's kitchen was now Preston Marketing Group's fastest-growing revenue stream. I managed a team of 12, had a corner office with a view of the skyline, and, most importantly, I had built it all without a safety net. My phone buzzed. It was Nathan, who had recently been promoted to head of digital advertising. Lunch to celebrate the 2-year mark? I'm buying. I smiled and typed back. You're always buying. My turn. Nathan remained my anchor at work, but my home life was shifting. Grandma Ruth and I had lived together in her cozy lavender-scented house for over 2 years. It had been a sanctuary, a place where I healed and grew strong. But change, as I had learned, was the only constant. One evening over her famous fried chicken, Ruth dropped the bombshell. I'm selling the house, she announced, casually buttering a roll. My fork clattered onto my plate. What? I found a lovely active senior community about 20 minutes away. They have a pool, book clubs, and no lawn to mow. I think it's time, baby girl. We both need our own space to grow. She was right, of course. She always was. Within 2 months, we were packing boxes. I found a sleek apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows, a space that felt like me. Moving day was a chaotic mix of emotions. Nathan and a few colleagues helped haul furniture. Surprisingly, my mother offered to help, too. She showed up in jeans and a t-shirt, sweating alongside us as we assembled bookshelves. We didn't talk much about the past, but her presence was a quiet olive branch. My relationship with my mother had evolved into a fragile but genuine truce. Over the last 2 years, her monthly emails had turned into bi-weekly coffees. She was still in therapy. She was dating a kind man named Paul, a high school history teacher who made her laugh. She wasn't the mother I had wanted at 22, but she was a person I was learning to like at 24. My father was the final frontier. He had called me shortly after I moved into my new apartment. I heard you have your own place, he said. His voice was no longer the desperate weeping mess from 2 years ago. It was steady, humbled. Congratulations. Thanks, Dad. I was wondering if we could have dinner. Just one dinner. No agenda. I'd like to see who you've become. I debated it for a week. I talked to Ruth. Risk the worst to get the best, she advised. I talked to Nathan. If it hurts you, we leave, he promised. Finally, I agreed. We met at a quiet Italian restaurant. My father looked older, his hair completely gray now. The arrogance that had defined him for so long was gone, replaced by a weary sort of clarity. I owe you a real apology, he said after we ordered. Not the one I gave you when I was feeling sorry for myself because Candace left me. I mean a real one. I waited, my guard up. I was selfish, he said simply. I put my own ego above my family. I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway because I thought I was entitled to more. I destroyed the best things in my life for a fantasy. He looked me in the eye. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know that I see you. I see what you've built. And I am in awe of you. It wasn't a magic fix. It didn't erase the graduation or the hospital stay. But it was the truth. And for the first time in years, I felt the tension in my shoulders release. We didn't hug at the end of the night, but we shook hands, and he promised not to push for more than I was willing to give. 3 months later, I stood on a stage at the National Marketing Summit. The lights were blinding, the room packed with 500 industry professionals. I was presenting on authenticity in the digital age, building brands that bleed. As I adjusted the microphone, I scanned the audience. In the third row, Grandma Ruth was beaming, looking regal in a red suit. Beside her, Nathan gave me a discreet thumbs up. And in the back row, sitting separately but present, were my parents. My mother sat with Paul, looking nervous but proud. My father sat alone near the aisle, his eyes fixed on the stage with intense focus. I took a deep breath. I thought about the girl who had collapsed on a stage just like this one, weak from hunger and heartbreak. I thought about the hospital bed. I thought about the empty house. Then I looked at the woman reflected in the teleprompter glass. Strong, capable, whole. Pressure reveals what really matters, I began, my voice ringing clear through the auditorium. It shows us who we are when the facade is stripped away. The presentation was flawless. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. I walked off stage not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a professional accepting respect. Grandma Ruth was the first to reach me. "Magnificent!" she cried, pulling me into a hug. "Absolutely magnificent." My mother approached next, hesitant. "You were wonderful, Brianna. Paul and I are making dinner next week. If you're free." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the effort. "I'd like that," I said. My father waited until the crowd thinned. He didn't try to hug me. He just nodded, a look of profound respect on his face. "You did good, kid. You did really good. Thanks, Dad." As we walked out of the conference center into the crisp evening air, I felt a sense of completion. Not because my family was fixed. We were still a mosaic of broken pieces glued back together in a new, strange shape. We would never be the picture-perfect family on the mantle. But I realized I didn't need them to be. I had built a life that worked without their permission. I had a career I loved, a home that was mine, a grandmother who was my soulmate, and a best friend who had become family. I had surrounded myself with people who chose me, and from that place of strength, I could finally choose to let my parents back in, not out of need but out of grace. "So," Nathan said, loosening his tie as we hit the sidewalk, "you just crushed the biggest speech of your career. How do we celebrate?" I looked at Grandma Ruth, who was already smiling because she knew the answer. "Ice cream," I said. "To celebrate?" Nathan laughed. "Always." I linked arms with Grandma Ruth on one side and Nathan on the other, and we walked down the street, leaving the shadow of the auditorium behind us. I was Brianna Foster. I had fallen, I had broken, and I had risen. And the view from here was spectacular. If you liked the video, please subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks for watching.